Hi there! This is Meaningful by Joseph Alcantara. If this is your first time in the channel, welcome, and I'm glad that you made it here. If you're a returning subscriber or a returning visitor, thank you so much for dropping by again. Probably you are thinking that it's going to be the typical podcast video where I'll be interviewing a special guest. But this video is going to be quite different because it's a solo episode. And in this video, I'll be sharing my thoughts, learnings, and reflections for this book, Build the Life You Want, The Art and Science of Getting Happier, written by Oprah Winfrey and Arthur Brooks. But before we dive into the details, I'd like to invite you all again, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell as well, so you'll get notified if we have a new video. So let's talk about why I am doing this. So at the start of 2024, one of my goals is to actually finish reading at least 12 books this year. And after I've completed the first book, the last chapter, it's Arthur Brooks saying that it'll be great if we all will be able to share and teach each other about everything that we read or we learn, especially if it is within the realm of happiness, love, and self-help. And I got inspired by that challenge, so I'm coming up with a special edition for the Meaningful channel, which will all be about the meaningful books that I've read, and I'm gonna interpret them in my own words. So starting with this first book that I've mentioned again earlier, Build the Life You Want, The Art and Science of Getting Happier, the new book by Oprah and Arthur. First, I'm gonna give my personal review, and then second, I'm gonna give my top 10 key takeaways that I'm gonna be framing in my own words. So on the review part, I would have to say that this book is simple yet profound. It's quite scientific, but also very practical. It's your typical self-help book that will give a background and some tips around the topic of holistic happiness. But the unique thing about this particular writing and narrative style is that it's not your typical philosophical, ethereal, or highly existential kind of approach that they've used in here. They used science. They've used research, they've used even the anatomy, especially of how the brain works. So if you're the type who would appreciate geeking out onto this kind of approach, definitely this book is going to be right for you. Second, it is also an easy read. It's composed of a little more than 200 pages, and it's divided into 10 digestible chapters, which for me was quite easy to navigate and to complete. But I would highly recommend that you don't finish it from cover to cover, because every chapter is very, very meaty. Every chapter has a lot of great reflections and key takeaways that you can think about, reflect on. And like for me personally, I love highlighting books. So for example, here you would see that, I like literally highlight even books like this. So after reading every chapter, I will take a pause, think things through, and try to practice what I've read in, the coming days. So that's also going to be my tip here as you approach this book. But on the whole, in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, I'm gonna give this 5 stars, because definitely it's very helpful, it's very meaty, and it's really very inspiring. So now let's move on to the top 10 key takeaways in my own words. Number one, happiness is not the goal. Unhappiness is not the enemy. That's the chapter title of chapter 1, actually, which for me is very striking because when we're growing up, we have that notion that the ultimate goal is always happiness. But they were saying here that happiness is not a destination, and happiness is simply a direction. And I really understood and agree with it because once you reach a certain level of state of happiness, you won't forever be there. So it doesn't mean that once you hit that, you're going to be forever and infinitely happy for the rest of your life. There is sadly no such thing as, and he or she or they lived happily ever after. Because every waking morning, there will always be the realities of challenges, difficulties, and if we don't have the right frame of mind or mindset in terms of how we'll be approaching our every single day and just think that I've already achieved happiness, I'll forever be happy, the bad news there is that it's just simply impossible. So when they delve deeper into the science of it, they were also saying that there are 3 major components to what really happiness is all about. And it's going to be the combination of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose. And the combination of these 3 then translates to hope and inner peace. And in those moments of challenges, grief, and imperfections in life, when you carry that through, that will be your ultimate arsenal when it comes to how you can approach every single day, where the ultimate definition of happiness can be brought to life. I also love the line that Oprah has penned on this chapter, and it was, "You feel the feel, then take the wheel." Meaning, your emotions will always be there, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But after you feel that emotion, it's up to you. You're gonna take the wheel in terms of how you're gonna take that forward. What would your approach be? And how would you react and live with the emotion that you've just experienced? Number 2, happiness is a decision, thanks to the science of metacognition. I was so fascinated by this chapter because Arthur explained how the brain works. The process of, feeling something first, and then eventually us deciding whether we would just simply embrace that emotion or we will take that emotion and do something about it and react differently or act differently. He also talked about the different kinds of personalities, a cheerleader, a judge, a mad scientist, and a poet. I really highly recommend that when you read this, you try to identify who you are as a person on those different kinds of personalities. But the most important thing about this chapter for me is understanding about the metacognition process, which is thinking about thinking, experiencing our emotions consciously, but being able to separate them from our behavior after experiencing the emotion, and refusing not to be controlled by our emotions. I think that's going to be the main takeaway there, where when we can't change the world around us, the only thing that we can control or change is the type of experience that we will embrace from the scenario that we are surrounded with. Number 3, connection to the second one, is choose a better emotion. Good news is emotional substitution is feasible. Say, for example, if we heard a bad news that on the surface seems bad, if we think things through, we can substitute a negative emotion with a relatively positive one. And it's also understanding that we don't necessarily have to accept every emotion that we feel first, and rather we can substitute it with a better one. Say, for example, if you're stuck in traffic, you might probably be thinking that this is such a bummer, but if we will take the approach of, fine, traffic is so bad, I'm gonna rest my mind, I'm gonna use it as a time to think, to meditate, to read, or to be productive, then at the end of it all, the problem has been changed to something that's productive. That's a very simple kind of pragmatic approach to certain things that can probably a cause of anxiety or stress to us. Another interesting thing that they've mentioned in that chapter is that gratitude is a feeling that materializes in response to your circumstance. It is a life practice. Another striking thing that they've also mentioned in this chapter is compassion versus empathy. In recent years, people are always advocating for empathy as a great emotion to have. And it's quite interesting how they positioned it, because the real essence of empathy is that you feel the feeling of the other person in front of you. But the sad thing about it is that after feeling, what's next, right? So they're advocating that we choose compassion over empathy, because after feeling the feeling of the person in front of you, if it requires action, if it requires finding solutions, if it requires applying tough love, that's where compassion comes in. Empathy ends with feeling, compassion ends with action. And I think that's a very powerful differentiation that we should be able to uphold, because there's no result, there's no action if it's just simply all feelings. So that is super powerful, that I also got from, learning number 3. Number 4, practice detached attachment. What do we mean by that? In this world where we're so attached with very important things, people, events, situations, our jobs, our family members, our friends, yes, it's great to be fully committed and attached, but we need to set boundaries or limitations to the level of attachment. Say, for example, when it comes to work, if it's super stressful, if it's highly toxic, it is good for us to be able to do the work that's expected from us, but we need to detach ourselves from those toxicity, for example. Same goes with friends or family members. Yes, we can love them, support them continuously, but if it comes to a point that toxicity is also going to affect us, there's such a thing as loving and supporting from a distance. And that's also, for me, the meaning of detached attachment. Number 5, build your imperfect family. So, according to Arthur and Oprah, the important components in our lives would be our family, our friends or our relationships, our work, and our faith. So starting with family, how we deal with them. Family is really complex. We have differences when it comes to opinions, differences when it comes to personalities or even values. And we just simply need to embrace the reality that every family member would be different from each other. But what should bind the imperfection in the family is the level of trust, the level of honesty, the level of respect for each other. Being able to, be transparent, being able to, put yourself and your vulnerability in front of everyone and try our very best to understand each of our family members would be super helpful, because ultimately, and I still agree, blood is thicker than water. whether it is your, family by blood or your chosen family, that kind of relationship is very important. Number 6, nurture friendships that are deeply real. So they've compared a life without friends to a house in a winter time that doesn't have a heater. And that is really, literally going to be cold and painful. The other thing that they've mentioned there is that friendship should be more about real friends and not deal friends. Deal friends are the types of friendship that you give something from that person or the person gets something from you, so it's very transactional. So it's important for us to strike up a friendship with someone who can do nothing for us besides care for us and give us good company. And they're saying that the rule of thumb, especially for adults, is to have at least one friend aside from our spouses or partners, with an upper limit to 10, that we can realistically spend enough time to nurture the relationship with. The other thing that they've mentioned is that, I think this more for, finding your partners in life, is that passionate love is very you-centric, and it's something that doesn't last. So we should really gun for companionate love, which is going to be more stable and lasting. So in romantic relationships, we need to aim for that, so it will have stable affection, mutual understanding, and commitment. Because if it's just simply all passion, sadly, it's not stable enough, and it can simply end. Number 7, make earning your daily bread a source of joy. It talks about our jobs. Let's all admit it, most of us would be spending at least 8 to 10 hours in our daily work. It's basically 40 hours in a week. And if we don't find joy in the work that we do, that's going to be quite a challenging and difficult and lonely life. So the best way, they're saying, to earn success is to find ways to get better at our jobs and set our own excellence and benchmarks and goals for ourselves, as opposed to the, extrinsic output or results coming from the jobs that we have. We should find the joy within us, and we should set our goals within ourselves as well. At the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfect job. There will definitely be days where, we will be blown off course on a regular basis. But if we have the right coordinates, then we will always be able to reorient ourselves. And also, we should remember that we are not our jobs. Our job should never define us, because self-objectification will lead to unhappiness. So for example, objectification at work is when our bosses view us just as a headcount or as a resource, and if we view our bosses just as a source of our money or as a source of our salary, which again is putting our jobs in a very superficial way, which can easily lead to unhappiness. It is important, though, to definitely put a space between our job and our family life, because space provides perspective. And to get happier, we just simply need to strive toward a goal that make our work more meaningful. Number 8, spirituality and mindfulness matter. Spirituality and religion are two different things. And it's not necessarily advocating for specific religions, but a practice and an understanding that it will make us happier if we focus off ourselves and put it instead on the majesties of the universe. There's a higher being, there's a higher power, and also it makes us kinder and more generous toward others, because ultimately most of the religions or the spiritual practice out there is all about getting outside of ourselves, supporting each other, being kind to your neighbors, being kind to the people around you, and practicing and showcasing love by being there for everyone in our society, in the mankind, and in the universe. Spirituality also allows us to make sense of our lives that is very confusing, of course, in this crazy world. So having that sense of mindfulness and spirituality help people escape the virtual prison of overthinking and rumination. We also tend to get love most when we give it freely, and having that personal benefit primarily when that benefit is not the goal is the ultimate practice of mindfulness, being in the present and practicing the kind of spirituality that best suits us. Number 9, teach and share what you're in the process of knowing. So just like this book, it is important for us to share our knowledge and what we are in the process of trying to practice and enrich ourselves with, because it has this multiplier effect. I love the line written by Maya Angelou, and it says, "When you learn, teach. When you get, give." It's very simple, very practical, but also will create a huge positive dent as we help each other and as we become human to each other. And they're also saying that our world needs advocates and warriors to help the millions suffering without relief. So with learning, sharing, we are becoming each other's source of hope. And number 10, be an advocate of love. All the pillars of happiness are all about love. It's all grounded in love for family, love for friends, love made visible by bringing the best of ourselves to our work, love for the divine through our, transcendent journey and spirituality. Love is a commitment and an act in discipline, and it is definitely a choice. It's not a natural thing that once you will always have to choose it. You will always have to, fight hard for it, and you should really definitely commit to it in every single waking morning. They said that when we start each day, we should learn to be open, and that openness should have that thought of, I don't know what this day will bring, but I will love others and allow others to also love me. And the last point that's connected with that is what they're advocating for if we're facing any dilemma in every single day. And that's simply asking ourselves the question, what is the most loving thing to do right now? And if we put that in our heads before we think of something, before we blurt out something, or before we act, then we will be coming from, a space and a moment of love that will eventually translate to the action that we're going to do, which is simply going to be great and beautiful. All coming from this beautiful book, Build the Life You Want, The Art and Science of Getting Happier. Highly recommended. Get it, read it, embrace it, absorb it, and live it every single day. Thank you so much. Huge shout out. Oprah Winfrey, Arthur Brooks. My first read this year is just simply amazing. I'll take it forward and I'll try my very best to get happier every single day. Thank you all for being here.